without additional spending. And then we will consider supplements to the 2023 budget, which represent new spending. And so we'll take the presentation from Mary Ann first. Sarah, go ahead.
I thought we were gonna also go over the waterworks.
Yep, we are.
Okay.
We will.
So first.
Okay, I can go there. I thought maybe I would just do a quick recap on what our influences on the budget are, but I don't need to. Maybe I'll quick do one little thing. We do have one update in the capital budget. If you recall, as part of the capital budget, we had 3 airport projects. 2 of them, let's see, I can tell you what page it's on in your book too. It would be, page, oh my gosh, 116, I think. The lining of these pages isn't very good. But there were 3 airport capital projects. One was Airport 523 runway for $2 million. 1.6 of it was going to be paid with federal dollars. The taxiway rehab of 1.5. 1.2 was going to be paid for grants, and then concrete and apron refurbishment for $750 and $37.5 was property taxes, and $712,500 was grants. John and I met with the FAA on Friday, and the 2 large projects, the first one, the $2 million and the $1.5 million, have been pushed back by the FAA, so we're looking in 2025 or 2026 that those would take place. And really, the apron project would get rolled up with that, but they will need design and engineering work for these 3 big projects, so they said I should estimate $750 for that. They would pay the $712,500, we would pay the $37,500, so we would really, if we wanted to pursue all of these grants, the design and engineering would put us in position to be awarded the $2 million, the $1.5, and the $750 in the future. So it would be $750 for pavement, engineering, and design, and that would cover all of these projects then.
Okay, so then, so that is the only one that we would have as a budgetary item for this year.
Yes, so we would
Is
basically.
the 37.5.
Yep, we basically take out the $2 million and $1.5 and just rename that $750.
Okay, good to
And
know.
then we will be in a line with the FAA and what they're willing to fund for 2023.
Well, he did say at the last airport meeting that the flow for those grant funds has been incredibly slow.
Yes.
So, okay.
So that is one change there, if the committee would agree to that.
I think we're agreeable to that. Committee, how do you feel about that? We'll push that off 2 years? I mean, that does help us with our other things, so.
So at 750 is getting, our match is 37.5.
Yes, and so that eliminates, our match on the other 2 was 700, right? So
Yeah.
the general obligation CIP for those
Yes.
2 other projects was 700,000.
Yes, so we won't need to borrow that
We won't
money.
have to borrow that.
Right.
One thing we should look at, I mean, I guess it depends on how this shakes out, but if we get to the end, we should look and see what we've left on the CIP list, because we left a lot of projects out. You know, so I think when we get to the end, but it's good to not have that pressure on that 700 for now.
Right, and I think when I put together the budget, I thought we were not going to need that money till 2024, so our 2023 borrowing wouldn't.
The draft
change.
didn't include that?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. All right.
Okay, so I'd updated these, but I forgot to re-email them to Mary. Because at the last meeting, Doug had asked, well, how much is the outstanding debt right now? And I upgraded my PowerPoint, but I forgot to email it to Mary. Do you want me to quick go do that in my office? Or it's not here because I didn't email it to Mary?
Email it to Caitlin because she's logged in.
I don't have the numbers in front of me because they're in my office. Well-
Actually, we've got a couple options. I mean, we can either hold on that and bring it in later in the meeting, and we could undertake discussion of the supplements while you go do it. I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to handle it. I mean, we were going to, okay, so we were going to leave the supplements. We just need to recognize that we're going to talk about the supplements. All the supplements are going to be new and added spending above whatever this, so we'll have Mary Ann go and email
Okay,
the new
my
PowerPoint.
apologies.
We can actually talk through the supplements while she's doing that. So you've received in your packets requests from Fire Department, Parks, Public Works, Economic Development, Police, and DPW, all of which have various fiscal impacts. Believe all of the respective department heads are here. So I guess if we want to just take them by department, we could have the department head walk us through their projects a little bit. We have received written material from them, but it would help if we can ask them some questions about some of the projects as far as timing. So, Doug, your question?
Well, just maybe a first quick question, maybe the mayor or Mary Ann's not here. Why didn't these make the cut on the original budget?
Supplements
sup-
never do. We always take supplements separate. So your draft budget is always your cost to continue what you have right now. And any new supplement for new spending or new staff has to come through here for approval first. They can't just build it in the budget. So that's why they're always a separate item, and then we rank them. So we decide if they make the cut or not. They don't get that power. So any new spending that's above and beyond their current budget allocation gets vetted by us separately, and we get to decide what, if any, of this gets in the budget. So the budget that they submit to us as a draft is only to maintain operations the way we have them right now. And
So none of these items came before
Nope.
the budget process and the mayor prior to
Nope.
this?
Well,
Okay.
they may have discussed them, but they're instructed to keep them all as supplements and submit them as supplements so that we get to vet them. So, because otherwise your budget could come forward with all kinds of new things baked in, and you wouldn't be able to discern what, you could have like budget creep with that, because all kinds of stuff could get baked in from year to year, and then the public can't see that happening. So by keeping this separate, this is a public-facing process where these documents are on the website and they're viewable. So then residents who monitor our activity can see what we have authorized or denied for new expenses.
Okay, so we have,
So-
the budget creep we have is excluding any new spending, so.
Yes, any
we've got
budget
some
creep we have now in cost to continue is a result of inflationary pressures on the
Right.
budget or lacking aids, whichever, but it's not new stuff that no one knew about. So that's where we're at with this. So if we take them by a, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I thought it would be cool to take them by department.
That's
I
what
think
we're
that's
going to do.
what you're going to say.
Yep, so we're
let's
going
get
to take them first.
Yeah.
So the first one, I guess there's a few mixed in here, but the first ones, non-personnel and supplemental requests that involve personnel come from the fire department. So if we could maybe have Chief Bartek come up and talk to us about his supplements and just kind of walk us through.
All right, which one do you want to talk
The
about?
first one we have is firefighter training, meals and lodging for specialty training.
Yes, and so this is related to, as you recall, maybe a couple of years ago, we created a training division chief position within our department. He's doing extremely well. We'd like to send him to the fire department instructors conference in Indianapolis every year. We did this past year, but we had to limit it what he could do. We'd also like to add some other staff that assist him in the training, some of our internal instructors, in sending that. In order to keep us progressive and up with current trends in fire and emergency rescue, all these different areas, he really needs to be attending that conference. Largest fire instructor conference in the world, 30,000 firefighters in downtown Indianapolis, the best spot. I've been there. I've actually spoke there in 2012. And he is applying to speak there also, which then gives him free access in there. It's really difficult to get in. He didn't get in this year. But so we're looking to add that and continue him throughout his tenure here, is to add that, increase our training budget so we can accommodate that particular conference.
Okay, so the request then is that we would add this training for this year, but then next year anticipate it as a line item, continued line item?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and it looks like, and how many people would you roughly be sending along with him?
We're hoping to send 4 to 6. Depends
Okay.
on where they come from.
Which is how we get to 13,000?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah?
So where is this conference located?
Indianapolis, Indiana.
And they don't have like a remote location due to the pandemic?
No,
or-
a lot of it's hands-on. You can't
Okay.
go to a forcible entry course, virtually.
Okay.
And so a lot of it's hands-on, and the vendors are there. I mean, it's in Lucas Oil Stadium. They've got anything from trucks to the latest technologies that come out. It is the best spot for our training division chief to be, to keep us ahead and our cutting edge of what we're doing.
Okay. So the intent was to send him anyway, whether or not we send the other people.
Yeah, and we managed to send him this last year. We had to do it on a dime. We didn't allow him to attend any of the pre-conference stuff. He chose to do that on his own, out of his own pocket,
Okay.
because it was so important to him. But our intent is to, and I attended this conference frequently myself. I can tell you that it's a game changer as far as what we do on an everyday basis, and what they come back every year is inspirational and always has a profound impact on what we do, so, in a positive way.
Okay. So we'll consider that. The next one is mobile fire investigation software licensing.
Yeah.
It looks like a new module for what you already have. huh?
Exactly. So we've got the inspectors last year, we did an add-on to we went to a new software for the inspectors. As Firehouse was phased out, they chose an APX. Now they want to add a module to that's going to help them with their investigations. It's not expensive, but it wasn't included in our last budget. It's $1,000. So I felt it prudent that I do a supplemental request for it.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
So is that a reoccurring expense? So
Yes,
that'll
and
be a
that will
grand-
be,
So
that will
that
be
would
part of our package. It
become
would
a
be-
line item for
It
next
will
year,
become
too,
a line
then.
item for next year, yes. It's not a
Okay.
one-time. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, and then we had a couple on the other side. We had a mental wellness annual check-in program.
Yes, I don't have that one open in front of me, but what I can comment on that is this is Holly Hakes, who the police department has hired. I believe they're going into their third year. She is a public safety specialist for mental health. She has an office here in Wausau. I've had multiple discussions with Chief Blivens, and she's really had some great inroads with the police officers, and we would like to offer that to our firefighters also. And basically, it's a once-a-year mandatory mental wellness check-in that our people would schedule with her. Or they could go to that meeting and sit mute, or they could sit there and get engaged with her. There's money built into that for another 2 visits with her, and then they would either have to go and pay on their own out of their health insurance, or we could recommend them to one of our current EAP. Our current EAP does a nice job, but they aren't position specific, they aren't public safety specific, and we do not have any mandated wellness check-ins. Mental wellness in our trade is of the highest, concern of our people. We have a very difficult job on a daily basis. They do that job just much like our police officers, identically to our police officers in the community. I think it would be really great to offer them, our firefighters and paramedics, the same access to some high-quality mental health on a once-a-year basis as we do on the police department side.
Okay, and so that 12,500 would get it for your entire group.
Yes.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So is there any economies of scale that we can capitalize into because we would do police and fire with the same provider?
That was her, she's got a standard rate per individual officer or firefighter, and I don't believe that there was any, we've had these conversations, she's aware she's contracting with both sides of us, both sides of our house, the fire and LE. I don't think that we're gonna see a discount. I think it's just, this is her rate.
If memory serves, I think when we approved it for the police department, we'd had some worker wellness discussion with HR, and the idea was that maybe we would try it and pilot it with them, see how it went, and if we found that it was successful, that we would be willing to entertain the idea for other work groups if it would be deemed of value. So they've not been at it real long, I think a couple of years maybe with her, right? I mean.
Yes, I believe it. Ben, is that 2 years with Holly? Yeah, so.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
I guess I would wonder, what the success rate is. Is there any data that could support extending it to other work groups? Because, I think this would be valuable for other work groups other than fire, staff.
Well, she's public safety specific, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'd need probably a different specialist if we were going to do the other.
She's actually led the Eau Claire Fire Department's development of their peer support team inside their department. She specializes in law enforcement, fire, and EMS. And so we would have, as far as our city, at least those departments specifically covered. I can't speak to other departments or what her capabilities in other areas are.
And is there data on the usage and that in the police department and how successful it's been?
Anecdotally, I don't know, Ben, you want to come up?
Bring Ben up and just, yeah. It's good that we have a little experience to rely on.
Yeah, I mean, I get an annual report from Holly on, obviously, all of our sworn staff go through the annual mental health check. There's a number of reasons that we decided to implement that. One is to break down the barrier of people actually seeking out mental health treatment. Now everybody knows that everybody's going to go see somebody on an annual basis, so it breaks down that barrier, which has worked very well. Chief Bartek mentioned that she does a variety of different things for us beyond that. She is here for a critical incident stress debrief, so when we have, a critical incident, whether it's a suicide, a fatal car accident, officer-involved shooting, she comes in and she does that critical incident stress debrief with all our staff. She does regular training with our staff. She supports and trains our peer support team. So she has a lot of touch points with our staff. So the benefit of the annual mental health check is the goal is to get people to follow up additionally when they need help, and it's a proactive measure. And so typically about 10% of our staff follow up with her with an additional appointment or two. And then, like Chief Bartek said, they will connect with either EAP or somebody on their health insurance plan. And Holly is on her health insurance plan, so every year we've seen about 10% of our staff have followed up with additional appointments because it is a proactive measure. So I would say it's been very successful for us, and I would hate to see it go away for us, and I would definitely encourage the fire department to have that service as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, and I think that's something that, we obviously will rank and score it, but I think that sometimes it doesn't get recognized because we're so busy celebrating their saves and their save rate, but I think there's some trauma to be had when, first things you see in general, but there's times where they can't save everyone, and, they see stuff that you can't unsee. So, it's certainly worth scoring, I think.
Yeah, I will make one last comment on that before I go. When I came into the position a year and a half ago as fire chief, the two biggest looming problems that our department had was, one, the lack of staffing. We've solved that. Two, mental health and support. And they've had, when we do these critical incident stress debriefings and things like that with the police department, it's the police officers, the firefighters, paramedics that are in there together. So they've had some exposure to Holly. The police officers are talking with the firefighters, and they're really wanting to get plugged into what she can do. So.
Well, sure. And burnout's a real thing too. So, in addition to the critical incident stuff. So definitely worth scoring. I think those are the only three we
Yes,
have from
they
you.
were. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next, we have the Park Department. We'll bring up Director Polly if you want to talk to us about, they've submitted just a couple here for trees. Well, trees and looks like some pool pumps and things, so,
Yeah,
okay.
it's hard to follow the fire department.
They are a tough act to follow, aren't they?
Yeah, a couple of the items so this is above and beyond our normal day-to-day operations. The Emerald Ash Borer management is one that I've submitted, I think, for the last 3 years. It was a plan that the park committee and the city council agreed, or I guess adopted. It was the Emerald Ash Borer plan, knowing that Emerald Ash Borer was in town. And it has been found in more and more places. So it's getting to the point where we're still managing it, but at some point, we could see a lot of standing dead trees. So to fund it fully, it would cost about $251,000 a year. We haven't funded it that way. We've only put $107,000 in our budget. We haven't raised that amount in the last 3 years. So we work with what we have, and we've been able to manage it so far with treating, removal, and plantings out of that budget. So far we're doing okay. This is to ask for additional funding, knowing that because it is becoming more apparent in the city, at some point we're going to have to throw more resources at it, because we will see after about year 4, when the bug has been in the trees, you'll start to get some very quickly standing dead trees, and those are hazardous trees we need to take care of. So we'll work with what we have within our budget, but if we could work towards getting that budget up to what the plan actually calls for that we adopted in 2019, then we can be more proactive, so we can treat more trees and we can remove more trees each year with that. So that's the Emerald Ash Borer.
Okay. Next, we have tree planting.
Yes, tree planting. So this is tree planting other than the Emerald Ash Borer, or other than ash tree replanting. This is any other tree that we lose from storm damage, from cars, from any type of other damage, or just that we have to take out from dying. We have a lot of old trees too. We roughly want to plant about 400 trees a year. That keeps up with what we're removing and what we're losing. And just with the cost of of materials and the cost of trees have increased. So this is to increase our budget by $8,000 so that we can continue to do about 400 a year. If we have what's in our budget, we do have a set amount in our budget, we'll just do with what we have, but it won't reach that $400 or 400 tree planting.
So,
Roughly how many?
well, I was going to, just a question, with regard to street trees?
Yes.
When street construction and reconstruction projects decimate the trees in a corridor, does the road project budget include tree replacement, or is that separate that you have to have in your budget?
No, most of the time that does include the tree
It does include,
replacement.
okay, because that's a large number sometimes at a clip there, so. Okay, go ahead, Doug.
So of the 400 you're recommending, how many can you do today?
I think, I don't have that exact number, but I think when I talked to our city forester, it was around 320 we would be able to do, so this is about 80 trees. And then the next item is the pool pump maintenance. So this is something we added, or something similar to what we added last year with the slide maintenance. The pools are becoming now 5, 6 years old, and with this is just annually, we should be taking our pool pumps out, having them doing some maintenance, general maintenance on them. But there is a cost to that, and it's not a cheap cost to do. This is just one pump per year. We would do like one pump this year, one pump next year, one pump the year after, so we would not do all three at one time. So this 5,200 is to take out that pump, get it refurbished so that it continues to operate for longevity.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So is there, like, delaying it by a year, does that just make the situation worse, or?
No, right now the pumps are in actually good condition. This is a preventative maintenance that is recommended through our operations and manuals that we have out for the pumps.
If a pump fails, what's the cost of a new pump?
I would have to check that. More than the 5,200,
Much more
I
than
believe.
5,200.
Well, that, I think that's our operative word there.
And did you know what the life expectancy of one of those pumps are?
I do not have that information, no, but I can get that information for you. I think they typically, with the operations and maintenance manual that we have, when they take them out and refurbish them every 5 to 6 years is what they recommend, which is we're getting to that 5-year cycle. We don't have that in our budget. If we continue to stay on our maintenance cycle and refurbish them, we should have less likely that they fail. So we'll continue to use that same pump and keep it going rather than replacing it altogether.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Other professional services, non-ash tree removal.
Yeah, so this is kind of goes along with the tree planting item that we had. This is if we have a significant number of trees go down in a storm, like we had this last year, we have a certain amount in our budget that we can cover as far as removal, or that even a certain amount of trees that we can handle as a staff removal. This is if there's additional trees that come down that our staff really just can't get to because of other obligations, or there's that many trees that have come down. So this is increasing our other professional services budget by $3,000, just to help with that cushion of having that amount available if we, as our staff, can't get to the tree removals and we need to call in other assistance. This would be private contractors.
Okay, and so that said, given that it's a contingency cushion and that, event may not happen, assuming that this was not funded and there was a large-scale event where you needed that help, you could actually come to us and we could fund that kind of on the fly on a contingency basis, either out of surplus or from other budget sources, right? So, I mean, like we do any other emergency expense, basically. Sarah?
And I guess I just worry because it seems like with climate change and escalating weather events, I mean, what is the liability issues if we leave those trees down or damaged? I mean, I guess that's my concern. If they're damaged and could fall down and we don't service them.
That would be a good question for
Because how long?
city attorney's
Well,
office.
how long did it
Yeah.
take for you to clean up after the last storm? Everything in the city.
Well, it was our department in Public Works that were working, Eric, we're probably working 2 weeks or so to clean up that, I think. And that was to get the big stuff off. I mean, there was trees, major trees, and then after that, it's small brush pickup and stuff like that over time.
And we qualified for a DNR grant for some of that, right?
No, that was the year before,
Oh,
when we
okay.
had the storm go through the year before.
So, yeah, so that's helpful as well.
Yeah.
If something, in the event of an emergency, I mean, as a committee, we keep the door open
Yeah.
for stuff like that if we need to fund it as needed. So next, we have invasive species control.
Yeah, the last one is, so the last couple of years, we have funded, one of the items we funded is the goats coming onto Barker Stewart Island through the CIP project that we had for the cleanup of Barker Stewart Island. As of this time, the city council moved to move the rest of that money into an account to get the design plans finished for the mill building down on the South River front, because that was part of that whole CIP project. So we were able to fund the goats again out of that project this year, but starting next year, we don't have that funding. So this would come out of, this is something new to our general budget if we want to continue to have the goats come, but then it also is, in addition, it's not just 12,000 for the goats, it's additional resources to put together invasive species plan to start removal of invasive species by either the goats or manual removal, or having other groups come in and start removing some in areas just to try to keep up with it. It's something that it's going to take years and years and years, and there's a lot of it. So this is more to put it to the forefront that we're going to be starting to be more proactive, even though we're going to be reactive for the next couple of years, because it's just there in many of our parks.
Okay, and so in addition to Barker Stewart Island, this really would get a process started in some other areas that
Yes.
people have identified. I know some of the neighborhood groups have come out asking for help too. so-
Yes, the southeast side has. We know it's on Oak Island. We've had some volunteer groups out on there, and then there's other areas of the city.
Sarah?
So this isn't part, so the goats aren't part of your actual budget, this is a new ask?
Right, we've been taking them out of a CIP project.
So if we would just keep the goats and then potentially like grow it over time, what would that look like?
Well, the goats cost about $3,000 a year is what the goats do for them to come the 2 weeks. We are recommending that we bring them back at least another time in the year, so we've been talking to the farmers. They should come in June, and then we should bring them back in August, because there's significant regrowth after they're here. They are effective, and they do get to the invasive species, but especially this last summer was a really good growing season, and we had more back. It would be nice to get them here to knock things down before the fall again, or we could do a mowing, we should do something else in the fall before we
Before it
get all that
freezes.
growth, and then it goes to winter. And
So would that be like $6,000 then?
Yeah, we could do $6,000 to start with the goats for 1 year, coming back twice.
So it could be a little less
It could be.
now? Okay.
Correct. Yep,
Okay,
and that's all I had.
all right, excellent. Anybody have questions for Jamie? Doug?
Yeah, I do have a question. Back on the
Go ahead.
pool, the pool pumps. So we've got 3 relatively new pools. We have an operating and maintenance budget, so we hadn't considered pump servicing in that time frame.
We haven't, nope. The pools are now, the oldest pool is 7 years old. And so it wasn't something that was we haven't had to do it up until now. It wasn't something that we proactively put into our budget because we hadn't needed it until now. And as we were instructed, anything new other than this could be probably considered general operation because it's the cost of doing business. It is now time to start doing this. But from our direction, we put it as supplemental.
They were
because
under
we had to.
warranty until now though, right? Weren't you having warranty work done?
For many years, they were. I think it was a 5-year warranty. So yeah, maybe the last 2 years they have not been, but I have to check on the warranty.
Okay.
Well, warranty doesn't necessarily preclude you from doing maintenance.
Right.
No,
Right.
No, correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, okay. All right, next we have Public Works. First one is hot mix asphalt.
Good evening.
Hi.
So if you remember, over the last 3 years or so, we've been trying to ramp up our hot mix budget so we can do more in-house street repairs versus in just kind of getting more done, reducing our redundancy of maintenance with cold mix and things like that, doing more permanent repairs. This past year, we were up to $150,000. This would put us up to $200,000, and it is a recurring expense. It would be, and that's the budget amount that we're trying to get to, is the $200,000. If you remember, just a few weeks ago, I came forward for a budget mod to move money from seal coat into hot mix for $50,000. So our staff is going to burn through the $200,000 budgeted for this year with that budget
Well,
mod.
and this is actually larger patches, right? So we've got the
Yes.
equipment now to do, I see the project they have going on 17th Avenue now must be a good example. I see they've done some.
That's correct.
Much
Yeah.
larger areas before
Yeah.
winter.
And on like East Thomas, we did like one section, of that block. That was just a lot of potholes. We're constantly being out there. So these larger stretches that we can do, they're longer term, more permanent, and then it prevents us from having to continually go back out there
Well, and
during
in
the
theory,
winter.
with the patchwork, they've done quite a mosaic on 17th there on that,
Yeah.
between the Rib Mountain cutoff and Stewart. And so, that said, that really should prevent water and salt from getting in underneath the pavement during the winter, right? Which is what we've been
Right.
struggling
It's
with.
just, it's a longer term repair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah?
So the hot mix, I guess I was always under the assumption that was just you filling in the potholes, but it's you like actually refinishing the entire, like you are on Bridge.
Yeah, we do also use it for pothole patching as well in the summer while the hot mix plants are open.
Okay,
And in the winter, we use the cold mix.
okay.
Yep.
So this could really repair the, the level of a lot of the streets if
Yeah.
you could have this up to where you think, like this amount would be able to change a lot of the streets, not just patch them, but like actually refinish them?
Yeah, so we'll do sections, like there'll be, you have a 2-lane residential road, right? We might do 12 feet on one section for 100 feet or something like that. That's really bad, right? That we're constantly trying to maintain. This isn't like we're gonna do 3-4 blocks in several areas.
Like on Fifth or Fourth Ave? Not like
Right.
redoing that whole
No,
street? Okay.
no, it won't be like that. These are, yeah.
Yeah, because I've just gotten several constituents calling about like certain areas that they're really bumpy, and I know they've been patched, which is great because you don't have those big indentations. But and like increasing the hot mix would actually help smooth it out because you would be able to do larger stretches at a time.
Yeah, and we do our own milling in-house too, so we take down some of that pavement, and then, like you said, that helps smooth things out
Okay.
and takes us down.
But the machinery that we own is not robust enough to do like a full skin patch on a road, right? That still
Correct.
gets
Yeah.
contracted out. I mean, you don't do
Right.
an entire lane for an extended distance.
Right, like when you look at Sixth Street, what we did on the asphalt overlay, that's all contracted out. We don't, that's larger equipment than what we have. Yep.
Okay, all right. Next project we have on yours is fleet analyst position.
Yeah. Might have Dustin come up a little bit too. This is a position in our motor pool, which the Mercury study has also recommended that we have. We do have a temporary person in that position right now, and that position is being funded temporarily through
Through vacancy?
vacancies. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
So how quickly will those vacancies be filled? And then you mentioned it does, I guess, but it makes your other employees less efficient because they have to deal with some of this stuff as well. So I guess what's the timeline on that?
As soon as we get approval, we would probably try right away, beginning of this next year here in January, to get someone hired.
Because I know hiring is typically pretty difficult right now, especially, but is that a position you think you could fill quickly?
I think so. The person that's actually filling the position right now has been working out quite well, so we will have at least one applicant for sure, and she's been doing the job.
Right. That's the question, I think, with any added staff, we always ask is like, first, what does the hiring window look like? And then, can we get by with maybe bringing that person on, say, like July 1st, and then you have 50% of the cost versus the full year. But then knowing that next year, that ramps up your cost to continue, because you get the full year of that added person, and, all of this is levy funded. So,
Yeah, with this position, she's already currently working for us, so we're kind of spending some of that money. It wouldn't be obviously the full amount, but it would be,
is it someone who's been reassigned that also does another job at the same time, or no?
I'm not sure what you
So
mean.
it's not a position that we've already had, and we have that person doing two tasks?
No, when we made this change, it was the, part of these duties that this person is doing is, some of it is new duties that the Mercury
Study
kind of laid out
recommended,
we
yep.
needed to do, but then our parts person used to kind of partially fill this role. And part of the study was to create a full-time parts position that was specifically trained and experienced in parts, and that's what we have now. We have
Okay.
a parts specialist.
Okay.
It's not an independent contractor. There's somebody that actually works for the city still?
Yeah, as a
That-
temp helper.
Okay.
Yep.
Temp, yeah. So she works for a temp agency, and we pay the temp agency.
Okay, so this would bring her on as a full-time employee with wages and benefits.
Correct?
Okay. Okay. Next, we
Can
have,
I ask a question on this?
Sure, go ahead.
So would the analyst have anything to do with the tracking for the motor pool fund?
Yes.
So we're sitting at, whatever, we won't have this 2.2 million gap potentially? I mean, is that part of the effort?
I mean, it is going to be admin for the motor pool. As far as the gap, I'm not sure exactly what.
To properly assign costs to departments. So, because, I mean, you might, well.
Well, this
we-
person, I guess, wouldn't be authorized to do that. Obviously, when we do our rental rates and stuff like that, we'll bring them before you. That's going to be part of our budgeting and stuff to try and get line back up so that we are basically charging the amounts we need to fund the motor pool.
Right.
but that
right.
analyst is not skilled to a point to actually figure out what the correct charge is and levy it, right? So that happens in the finance department? Where do we figure out how much we're going to, the study told us we're short, but who keeps us charging the right amount, I guess?
So I think it started out, we were using DOT rates, and Solomon probably can, add some background information. We just have never updated our rates, so,
They have, but we haven't. Is that,
I don't even know that the DOT has, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I don't know either, but some of this has come about too with the study that we had done, as we had an aging fleet. And
Yeah.
we're trying to, turn that fleet over in the recommended timelines, and so.
well, that's where we talked about the
that's
five-year
adding
debt.
to
Right.
our,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
And I think,
our disparity and
right,
where we're at.
the old parts person really was relying on the mechanics to purchase their
Yes.
own parts. And so that was one of the things that Mercury said is mechanics should do mechanic work, the parts person should do the work, but the parts person was a clerical position, basically, and didn't have the expertise to do parts work. So when she retired, they replaced that position with the actual person.
With somebody
who
that
had-
knows parts.
Right, but then they didn't want to do clerical work because they were a parts person. So then we had this void of a lot of the bookkeeping and pay bills. Solomon, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I do think, Doug, to your point, yeah, I mean, I think this person, it would be directed to more closely monitor the budget on where we are throughout the year. Probably report to Solomon as the fleet manager, so we can have that tracking and that information throughout the year, yeah.
Okay. All right, additional questions on that? If not, we'll move to additional mechanic position. And it looks like that's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we're already short a mechanic, but you actually need two, right? So my question is, do we have space for this person to work? We are so short on space with the state of the DPW garage. I mean, we can't even agree on a site for where this thing is supposed to go, let alone design and build one. So do you have room to put another person? Or would you make them alternate shifts, or what do you do with them?
We do have multiple shifts, so I think we could find the space. We may have to shuffle toolboxes around, put it in a different bay, something like that. But we're so short on help with our older fleet and stuff like that, that I think that person would be a real benefit. I do think we can find space. It's going to be tight, no doubt. We know we need more space.
Would this cut down on the amount that we've been outsourcing for mechanical work then? I mean, I don't know what the total is, but I've heard that we've been outsourcing an awful lot of work to a private garage because we didn't have enough mechanics, so, and, I mean, not even
That
the.
is the goal. Ultimately, through the whole Mercury study, the goal is to get basically anything that isn't specialty work back in-house.
Like, take it back in-house
Yeah.
and then, okay, because that's, okay, do we know if what our outsource cost is even close to 90,000? I mean, that's what we've estimated the mechanic would cost, is the outsourcing,
Oh, yeah, it's way above that.
it's way above? Okay. That's important to know, because I think if that number comes down a commensurate amount, it makes this is an easier decision to make for us, if we know that you're going to spend less on outside mechanics. So the other one is safety and training specialist, is I think the last one that we have from you guys. Also sort of self-explanatory. Does anyone,
So
know.
I think, really what we're trying to look at is, with all of the divisions, that would be water, sewer, streets, all of the labor positions, there's a significant amount of training annually that they have to go through. And we're trying to get that all centralized under one entity to make sure everybody gets the training they need, that all the coordination is happening. So, we're not doing confined space at 2 or 3 different times a year. We're not, right now, a lot of it is done through human resources, and they're kind of the tracker of that. But I think that there's a lot of efficiencies that could come into play, is if we had somebody that coordinated the training and for the entire department.
Well, and there was a time, at least when I first came on at the city, we had a safety and risk management person that worked out of City Hall and kind of would go around and assist the departments with different elements of that and develop some safety and training programs and risk management type things. And, obviously he left and then we didn't replace him. But assuming that this person, would you have that person work, I guess throughout the public works organization? So on the water sewer side and on the street side and on the, inspections, whatever else needs to be.
Engineering,
Engineering,
inspections,
yes. So,
Yep.
that said, if we're sharing that employee with the utility, do we share the salary as well?
Yes.
Or we do? So,
Commensurate
I mean,
percentage, but.
well, and that's what I'm thinking, is it a
That's the
70?
hope.
Let's hope,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not-
Getting blood out of a turnip.
well, I know, but I mean, if it eventually,
So, yeah.
assuming that we take steps to improve the health of the utility, if that's a 70-30 split, we wouldn't have all of that as a levy-dependent cost. I think that's important to recognize.
And I think it's important to recognize too, that the organization, as we move forward with these new positions, it's changing a little bit for efficiencies and improvements, I mean, obviously, we're short on some facilities right now in order to fully implement everything that we should and bring everything back in-house. But I think we're on track. There's going to be a couple of years here before that happens. But these are just some things that we wanted to make sure that the Finance Committee and the City Council were aware of moving forward.
Well, I think that safety and
needs.
training is important. I think safety and training eliminates accidents, and I think from a workers' comp standpoint, because we self-insure that, the better trained and the less risky those things are, and the better trained people are, that's just a win for us. I will say that before I came on, the number of years before I came on the council, DPW lost 2 employees in a confined space situation. One was overcome by gas, the other one jumped in to help, and both died. So that's a real thing here. And I think the institution, on some level, most of those folks that were there at the time have retired, but the organization still feels that. So, go ahead.
And I think if it's not siloed just in one department, I think it makes more sense to have something that would cross multiple divisions. So, I mean, if that's something that's possible with that position.
Yeah, that would be the intent, yes.
Yep, okay. So that's important. We'll rank and score that as well. Anybody else have questions for Eric and Dustin on those projects at all? If not, that leaves us with just the request from police,
you.
and then we'll be through the supplements. Thank you.
You got community development.
Oh, we do have community development. I'm sorry. We have an administrative assistant position request from Liz. Liz, do you want to take yours quickly here first? It looks like right now they all are sharing the work that somebody else could probably help with, huh?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
This is, I've been in my position for just over a year, and this is the second time I've made this request. We did identify an additional funding source from the last time I made this, because we know that we could allocate some of the person's time to TIF funding. Those allocations I gave for CDBG and TIF funding are approximate. And then I did want to also note another measure of success that I neglected to put in here before was the reduction of overtime of existing staff. We currently have some of our hourly employees are working significantly over to assist with all of the committee management and various aspects of the job that basically we just don't have anybody else to do right now.
Okay. That said, did this position exist in the department before, though? For some reason, I thought they had an admin assistant, and Chris Schock got rid of that person for marketing dollars or something, right? So,
Well, he created the second planner.
okay, that's how we ended up with the assistant planner. Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
I guess I always wonder too, is there a way to make it more efficient? Not that I don't think that it's valuable, because I think that economic development department needs something, because, I mean, if you're turning away people because there's nobody there, that's really tragic. But I think, is there a way that we can optimize our administrative assistant staff so that there's, I know, economies of scale. So like, if we have somebody that's running more like the committee work and putting in the packets together, like what are the different kinds of components that are really taking away the job tasks from these positions? Like, could we maybe just allocate those in different ways? But I do think it's valuable to have somebody in your area, because, I mean, having the lights off in the economic development office is pretty sad, so.
And we have, I asked, I was only able to attend one director meeting, but for this meeting, I'm trying to remember, in the last like month or so. But I did ask every director at that meeting if they had an admin that we could share, because I know last year that was a question that was brought up and no one volunteered anything. So there are components of the job that could be done in a different office, but then to your point, it does, we still have an empty office much of the time, because our job is more in the community than it is in an office. So it's not ideal to have an empty desk.
So between though, like, planning and, economic development and community development and all of the programs that get managed, this is a half-time position. We obviously have enough to fill 20 hours a week, basically, for somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so-
Yes, we started with halftime for this because I know it's an ask. I know that the budgets are tight every year, so we wanted to make it as palatable as possible at a halftime position.
Okay. All right, anybody else have questions for Liz on that? Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that leaves us with the police department. We'll bring Chief Bliven up. He's only got a couple here. First one is OWI blood draw service contract. It looks like there now is a bill attached to blood draws. So
Right.
not something you asked for apparently, but
No,
It's there.
but for the last several decades, as long as I've been with the police department, we've taken some arrestees for OWI to Aspirus, and they do the blood draw, get the vial of blood, turn it over to us. We mail it in to Madison for the chemical test for prosecution purposes. About 8 or 10 years ago, we transitioned. We actually used to do breath testing at the PD and blood testing. 8 or 10 years ago, we transitioned to doing blood-only testing for a variety of reasons. And we talked to Aspirus at the time. They said they weren't going to charge additional for that. Now that has changed. We started getting bills in March of this year for OWI blood draws. They're $33 a piece. We do 330 to 350 OWIs a year, and so that's where that cost comes from.
okay. It makes a person think that if people would make better decisions, this would all be cheaper. Clearly, that's
Right.
not within our control.
Yeah, so certainly a critical need. We need to be able to get the
Well,
blood.
it builds the
blood draws
case. I
done.
think you're
Right.
not going to get too far in court if we don't have the evidence, right? So, Mike,
Right.
and then
Do
Sarah?
the blood draws have to be done at a medical facility? Is this something that officers can be trained to do?
Admin
It
assistant.
actually is something that we've considered. I think, we certainly probably our paramedic trained people could do them at the fire station too. I think from a cost perspective, if we're going to be taking in, one of our city employees to do that, away from the paramedic responsibilities, I'm not sure that's a good use of their time. And I don't want to put our officers in a position where they arrest somebody and now they're sticking a needle in their arm. I just think that's really bad optics. I think we'll have more people resistive to that measure. So I just think it's much better for us to have a medical facility do that blood draw. There certainly probably are other options, but I think, a medical facility is best for those
Well, and that's
reasons.
to say that not everyone is necessarily game for the testing to start with, so, right? I mean, it's not like everyone is easy to get along with in that particular circumstance. So, Sarah, did you have a
That is
question?
true.
And I guess my question was, is there any other place to partner that you think would be more cost-effective? Like NCHC or?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly other partners that we could talk with. I mean, we do on occasion go to St. Clair's. St. Clair's does not charge us, or Ascension now. They don't charge us for blood draws. I think if we started taking that volume to them, I think they would start charging us. It's not a conversation we've had, but again, if we, my thought process why I didn't approach Ascension is, we arrest somebody on the west side of Wausau, and then we have to take them over to Ascension. We're probably spending more money in officer time driving back and forth and gas than it would be just going with Spira. So, it's $33 for the blood draw, and I don't know that there's another option that would be better. I didn't approach North Central Healthcare, but,
Well, and chances are, if the case is properly built, that the fine that they get is way more than the $33. So, maybe that's, takes care of itself a little bit too. Doug?
Do we know what the county does?
yeah, they go to Aspirus.
So they're
And
getting
they're
bills
paying
too
the
now?
$33.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, all the local law enforcement agencies had a discussion back in March because we started getting bills for it. We have a higher volume than any other law enforcement agency, so it's a little more difficult in our budget. And we talked many times with Aspirus throughout the year trying to figure out, is this necessary? Can you not charge us? But we're at a point where they're going to charge us.
Can we recruit this from the, if a person is convicted, can we recruit that in the form of a fine?
I don't know the answer to that.
Be nice to get the money back.
It would be nice to know if it was part of your, costs associated with it, but probably not. And that's assuming, that isn't always a municipal citation, right? Often
Correct.
that's a state violation, so, you're not necessarily able to build stuff on or pack stuff onto it, so. Okay, so we'll rank that. The next one we have is 9 additional body cameras for detectives.
Yeah, so right now we have body cameras for all of our patrol bureau, patrol officers. Everybody in uniform basically is assigned a body camera. So our detectives, we have 7 detectives and 2 detective lieutenants. That's where the number 9 comes from. They do not have assigned body-worn cameras. So when they go out into the field to do field interviews or if they're executing search warrant, what they do is they go into the basement, they grab somebody else's body camera that's not working or a lieutenant's body camera that's not working, and they have somebody reassign that camera to them, and then they go out in the field and do their job. So recently, and that's been working okay, but there is some administrative time that goes into that, and sometimes the assignment of the body camera gets missed on the front end, so we have to go through the back end to figure out how to reassign that camera. So there is some concern about that, about missing tagging of body cameras. So if we have a criminal case, it's really important that all those body cameras are assigned to the right person, so they get assigned the right case number, so that the district attorney has every body camera associated with that case. And we've had a couple of issues that we've had with that. But really where this request is coming from is we had a complaint filed with the Police and Fire Commission. That's been almost a year now, almost a year ago, and we were directed to have an external law enforcement agency investigate the case, and so we did that, and so the Neenah police chief investigated that complaint against the police department, one of the outcomes was he recommended that we have body-worn cameras assigned specifically to our detective bureau. And so that's where this request is coming from, is from the outcome of that case and the recommendation from that external investigation.
So it does really restrict people's ability to call into question the integrity of the video evidence then if the camera is clearly assigned and it's not moving between people? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
kinda where-
it does raise that possibility. Again, we haven't had a case dismissed or any major issues with that, but it is a concern of ours.
Okay. Sarah?
And so this is a one-time cost, right?
No, it is not.
Okay, so but the equipment itself would be a one-time cost, and then the software?
So the way the body camera contract works is, and actually we have a contract with Axon for our tasers, for our squad cameras, for our interview room cameras, and for our body cameras. And that is an annual fee. We pay $117,000 for all of that equipment and the storage of all the videos associated with that equipment. And so that contract is an annual fee, and the equipment comes with that contract, almost like a lease. And then every 2.5 years, that equipment gets replaced. So it's not a purchase of the equipment and then use.
But
of
is the
equipment.
contract a per camera cost?
Yes,
Is that
it
where we
is.
get to the 17? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's a per camera cost, and that would be an ongoing annual cost. At the end of 2023, our 5-year contract with Axon expires, so we're already working through, a re-upping of that contract and trying to figure out what that's going to cost,
Okay.
and whether or not we need to seek additional vendors.
Okay. Anybody else have questions on that? If not, the last one last one we have is the community outreach homeless expense. And so this one, I actually have a little background on this because we talked about this. When we hired the community outreach, in fact, I'll say on the front end, I actually asked the PD to submit this to us for consideration because when we hired the community outreach coordinator, I actually had a discussion with her and Officer Lemerand and the deputy chief about how it was going. It had been a few weeks. And she said, actually, she does have some sources where she can get things, but she said sometimes the solution to people's problems, or at least the start to getting people to a better place, is amazingly simple but yet prohibitive. And so I asked her what that was about, and she told me that sometimes when people are in that situation, simple things like public records, like if you have to go buy your birth certificate, or you have to replace an ID, or that costs money and they don't have it. Or in some cases, she said sometimes it's as simple as a person wouldn't mind going back home if they live somewhere else. They can't afford a bus ticket. And so I had said to her, well, is this a roadblock to your being able to perform these services out in the community? And she said, well, it would certainly be nice to have a small allocation of funds that if we don't have another source to get it from first, that, we would have a small amount that we could use cautiously, that if it's the difference between getting somebody on the right path or not, that she'd have this allocation. And I said, well, I think then you and your team should put in a request that we could talk about. I guess we were actually going to hear from her tonight in Public Health and Safety, and she had a scheduling conflict about how it's been going, but I think there's some success stories. So I guess, do you want to talk about her work a little bit, Ben? Or, I mean, I don't want to set her up to fail by the fact that she can't be as effective as we want her to be because of these tiny hurdles.
Right, and I think, you said it really well. So, so one of the things that she does when, she's always out in the community every day. I can't hardly find her at her desk for sure, which is exactly what we want from her. And so she's building relationships with people who are unhoused. And one of the, when people are willing to talk with her, sometimes she's been talking with them multiple times throughout the week or throughout the month. And, you never know when they're going to say, yeah, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what options exist for housing. And the first thing she does when they say that is she makes sure she knows when the last time is that they ate. And so if they haven't eaten for quite some time, she said, it's really important that they eat because their brain is foggy and it's hard for them to concentrate on what their future is going to look like. So she'll take them, she'll get them a small meal at McDonald's or somewhere. And then, then she'll talk to them about, do you have an ID? Do you have a social security card, a birth certificate, something that you're going to need to get a job or to be able to rent a place. Another hurdle is an application fee for a rental unit. So those are some of the things that she's expended money on, and we've reallocated some funds that we have within our current budget so that she has some money right now to do those things. But
Just to finish the year though, right? To
Right.
get her started?
Right. Certainly we'll need some kind of ongoing funding for those types of things.
Sarah?
But I think with this new position that's going to be reoccurring expense, I think it needs to be part of the budget, it needs to be baked in. So,
I agree.
These things are going to be necessary continuing forward, so I think it makes sense.
It's really no different than like giving when we hired the humane officer, she needed a vehicle and she needed caging and she needed like stuff to do the work with. And, when you hire someone, they need like equipment. This is kind of her equipment because, she's out there, it's like she said, sometimes finding just the smallest solutions, like the rental application was one thing she mentioned to me, where if a rental application costs like $40 and they don't have it, well, where do you start? Mm-hmm. So, that's, I think, important work that we've asked her to do. And I hate to set her up where she's already hamstrung because simple solutions are like not possible for her. So, any other questions? Doug, you have a question?
What would you anticipate the upper end of this annual expenses? Is it the 5,000 or could it be significantly more?
I don't know if I would say, well, I guess it depends what you mean by significantly more. I don't know for sure. We're starting with 5,000. I think that's probably low. I contemplated asking for 10, but I thought, we can try, we start with 5 and, come back to you next year with an update and let you know where it stands. And,
So it's an expense account for miscellaneous expenses
Right.
that she
Right.
incurs. I guess the only thing I would caution against is if it becomes the go-to when we might have somebody in community development or
Well, she did
in another
indicate that
program
she
that could
was familiar
source
with
that.
other sources and would use them all first before she used
Okay.
this. And we'd asked her to keep a log of what she uses it for, so that she and we all know what that's about. But
So that's an expense and reimbursement thing, or is it a credit card? How does the mechanics of it work?
Right. Well, through our accreditation process, we're required for any of our petty cash accounts to have a track record log of every expense and receipted. So, we can certainly provide to you, here's what we spent the money on, if you're interested in that now or down the line.
So I'm less concerned about that as I am how it's,
How it's expended.
yeah.
Yeah, so we can share that with you so you can look at it.
Yep, and that's the one thing we thought, if this was a trial and if it needed to be recapitalized, we could certainly have a discussion about, that and what how good it's doing. In theory, the more people she helps, assuming that a person that she helps to a better place isn't immediately replaced by someone else in crisis, in theory, she should have a larger push now, and then as things improve and the numbers are when we had Eric Lemerand doing some of this work, he had cut the numbers in half. So let's say in a year, maybe that happens for her, we'd have less people that need the stuff she's using it for, if that makes any sense, Sarah?
Well, and I think, to your point, with all the other things we're doing with ARPA and we're trying to accomplish, I think this, just complements what she's doing. So I think it'll be another supplemental request next year, and we'll reevaluate the situation at that time. But I think this is a good thing to bake in, because I think that's a baseline. And I think that's a good thing to have.
Well, and if it works, and, we decide that it works and that they're using it the way we want to see them and that they're getting the results we want to see, and if it becomes a part of their operating budget, then so be it, I think in future years. But because it's brand new and she's brand new, we thought we would bring it so the public can see too, like what we're proposing. But, she did say that if she had other sources that she could get the stuff from, that she would certainly do that first, so. Okay, so there's that. Is that your last one? I think it is.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Okay, so that takes care of the supplements. We want to, because we're up against a number of meetings this week, our goal is to rank these supplements. If we can rank them tonight, email them to Mary Ann tomorrow, if that's possible. Is that possible? You got them done. Okay, and so if we could rank them tonight and get them to Mary Ann like tomorrow, so she can have the tally tomorrow night for us, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, I sent mine in already, but I probably would change my mind on a few here.
Okay, that's fine.
Adjustments and just
Yeah.
revise it and send her a new one.
And I just sent mine in after revising throughout the
Oh, okay.
meeting. So
I
I'm good
penciled
to go.
mine together this afternoon, so I'll go home and key them into the spreadsheet. That is much easier, and then I'll send it to you yet too today.
So will you anticipate a meeting on Thursday?
It depends on how far we get tomorrow, because right now we have to analyze our cost to continue, and then we have to figure out what, if any, cuts and like time allocations and whatever have to happen. And then we have to analyze what of this we're going to bake in the budget. I don't know if the statistic is still true, but when we talk about like new spending, our rule of thumb that we always used was that $25,000 was 1 penny on the mill rate for everyone.
So
And so
did
that's still valid, so we have to.
Did Mary Ann, you went back to your office to get something earlier when,
Oh, I went to
Oh, okay,
get my
then.
updated
All right.
poll.
Yep, and so she's ready with that, so we
Yep.
can segue back into that if we want to shift over to the utility discussion.
Sure, and Eric is here, Scott is here if they want to add anything. So we had gotten all through the budget PowerPoint except for the water and sewer utility. I guess I'm starting out with debt because when we look at the budget for both the water and the sewer, obviously debt retirement has had a huge impact because of the new debt related to the plant. So if we look at the water utility, with the existing debt that's been authorized, the maximum principal balance outstanding would be the $50,186,287. So that's what's authorized. Right now, the safe drinking water component of that is $44,756,000, and on October 20th, we had $39,181,000 outstanding. So when we look at in the budget what we need to budget for debt retirement, the 2017 issue, the Annual debt payment, principal and interest is 487. The 2019 D is 181, and the 2020 today is 2.5 million. Now, each time we do a draw, the state of Wisconsin redoes the amortization schedule. So if you think of a home equity loan or a new construction, a new house construction, you have a construction loan and then you refinance it for your permanent mortgage. This works a little bit different. We already created our permanent mortgage, so to speak. They just redo our permanent mortgage
Payment figures.
amortization each time we do a draw. So if we drew the whole 44 million, that would be, the loan payment will go up to 2.9 million. So it's at 2.5. The maximum it would go up to is another about $400,000. The 2017 C issue, each one of those issues, and I've got the actual amortization schedules in the debt, in the budget book, but right now, for the next through 2026, it's a relatively high payment. The principal is somewhere between 385 or between 385 and 435, and then that drops down into the $100,000 to $200,000 range. So there will be some relief beginning in 2027, and the 2019 will remain steady. The 2017 expires in 2037. The 2019 in 2039, and the safe drinking water is in 2050. So when we look at our water rates, back in March of 2020, when we were working on the plans and entering into the actual construction of the water treatment plant, the presentation predicted about a 45% increase in rates to pay for the plant. So far, the PSC, if you recall, at the last meeting when we were talking about the ARPA request, the PSC sets the rates for the water utility and would not allow us to incorporate the entire project in our existing rates because the plant has to be in service. So July 1 of 2020, the PSC authorized a 27.7% increase in rates. It was a two-step rate, and then they authorized a second one on January 1 of 2022 of 3.5%. So we do have a rate request that we should be submitting to the PSC either this week or next week. And that can take a number of months to get a response, but you can see that we have not increased rates based on that presentation to the maximum that presentation, and of course, there's been additional cost increases to run facilities just due to inflation and other increases. When we look at the water budget, the revenues that we're anticipating based on current rates is $7.8 million. And when you look at the expenses for personnel, contract supplies, things like that, the depreciation is about $1.2 million. And then if you recall from a previous meeting, our tax equivalent, which is a calculation that the PSC has developed, would be $2 million because the PSC's calculation includes construction in progress. So, and it looks at the values of the property at the end of 2021. So we did have quite a bit of construction in progress at that time. So when I look and calculate the rate, it looks like it would be around 2 million. We will have the exact calculation once the schools set their tax rate and we set our tax rate. But you can see by looking at the 2020 actuals and the 2021 actuals that we have slowly been increasing that tax equivalent due to just new assets coming on board with the utility. When we did our 2022 budget, we did not estimate getting $2 million of equivalent. We estimated about the it was somewhere between 1.5 and 1.4 million dollars. So our 2022 budget does not expect $2 million in tax equivalent, and nor does our 2023 budget. So one of the things that we could do is forgive a portion of it. Like I had mentioned, I had gone through the PSC website and looked at approximately 13 communities our size and bigger, and found 2 communities who are forgiving a portion of their tax equivalent. It was the city of Milwaukee and the city of Oshkosh. So I did reach out to the city of Oshkosh to get a copy of their resolution where they do that annually. But that certainly is something that would help the utility as it kind of adjusts to its financial condition pre-new rate increase. So if we kind of continue on, you can see with 7.8 million of revenue and 7.9 million of expenses, it's already got a loss of $118,000. Depreciation is a non-cash expense where we're just amortizing the asset over a period of time. So if we add that back in, we can see we would have a cash of $1,079,000. But our debt service is 3.2 million. So without a rate increase in 2023, the utility would not have sufficient cash to actually make all of its debt payments in 2023, which again furthers the justification for a forgiveness of the tax equivalent. In addition, they have a 2023 capital plan of about $2.6 million, which really puts them at sort of a cash shortfall of about 4.7. Now, again, the PSC will be looking at a rate increase, and if we March, it takes about 6 months to get a rate increase. I have had conversations with the PSC, and they said they're going to try to move ours along, given the fact that we've been out without a rate for such a long time, and but the ARPA request would really help with their capital plan. So I think we've got a strong case for funding that 2023 capital plan with ARPA and forgiving a portion of that tax equivalent, and then when the rates go into effect, obviously that would help them be able to meet their debt service requirements for the 2023 year.
So last week, when we talked about the fact that we had the Moody's rating and they had a negative outlook on revenue bonds for the utility, but not necessarily our general obligation debt, the first thing that we think or we're going to get asked or have been asked already is, well, what are you going to do about that? And so if we talk about, the PSC knowing up front that we needed probably a 45% rate increase, but what we've gotten is about 30, we know that of that original allocation, we're still about 15% short at least. So somewhere between maybe 15 and 20% is what we expect them to probably adjust, right? And then if we then also, like, say we forgive, like we had talked about, go back to last year's amount, 500,000 of the pilot payment, and then on top of that, we fund their capital with ARPA, which then eliminates additional borrowing in the utility, that really should buoy up their financial
Yes.
health. And then as soon as the asset comes online and they can use the value of the plant to balance the equation on the other side, where right now they're bearing all the debt but none of the asset value, we should see an improvement in their outlook.
Right.
Overall, right? So,
I think the other thing is when, preparing the 2023 budget, it was difficult because they have a new plant. So we did ask Donahue and Becker Hoppy to go back and look at estimates for energy usage based on the design of that new facility to help us fine tune those. We haven't gotten them back yet. So this would be, I would hope, would be on the high side of that budget, not on the low side of the budget.
Lisa, I have a question. Go ahead. So how much, Marianne, do you know, how much of the ARPA funds have we allocated towards the public works or the utilities so far? Do you know?
So far, 800,000 for the screening, the waste screening, 800,000 for for the storm, which really isn't a utility, isn't our water or sewer utility. And then the PFAS, the 240,000 for the pilot test and 230 for the replacement drinking water.
So not a ton of our ARPA, and that
No.
is really like one of the goals of the ARPA is to
Yes,
help with.
it is one of the main categories.
Yeah.
Clean, safe water is one of their
And-
pillars, yeah.
And, I mean, looking at it too, I mean, it's gonna affect the entire, city.
Yes.
And because if we would help more with ARPA, wouldn't this help with potentially rates, or no?
Yes. Oh, it definitely will help with
Yeah,
rates.
with,
Yep.
because that's one of the big things that I get from constituents
Yes.
is the rate increases of our water plants, so, I mean,
Me too, and I think one of the things that we've talked about that we've tried to do with our ARPA is find projects that a large cross-section of the public can benefit from. And so when you create a project that essentially benefits every user of a system, by either improving the health of the provider, and getting them to a better situation where they're not as dependent on, ratepayer adjustments and new debt for ratepayers to clear, I mean, that's a net positive, so.
I guess I just wanted to be clear that doing this would actually help not only the utility itself, but also help the ratepayer.
Absolutely.
I mean, so it would ripple
yeah,
down, or
feels like it
trickle
would.
down, so to speak.
You're not suggesting that the rates are going down?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But they may not need to go up as robustly. If we're looking at the need for an increase, maybe we need less of an increase if we take some steps on the front end, right? So,
Just a big question, looking back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we had, the Water Commission anticipated the requirement to do a rate increase to pay for this. What did they base it on, or did they miss the numbers here, or why are we that short?
Because
having
the
planned?
PSC's rules say you cannot submit a rate increase until the asset is in service. So they tried to build in.
We did some anticipatory,
they
that was where
built
the
in a-
45 came from,
Yeah,
right?
Well,
Go back to
so,
the-
yeah. So the 45 was what Donahue thought that the new plant was going to require as far as a rate increase. We submitted our rate increase, so we used Ellers to do a formal rate increase. They submitted that rate increase, and then the PSC looked at our rate increase and said, we'll give you this. And again, they won't allow you to use assets that have not been placed in service. They did allow us, I think it was a 6.6% rate of return, which usually it would be a 4%, but it still was not nearly enough to set aside our debt payments in 2022. And again, we did think that the water utility plant was going to be done a little bit earlier this year, so we could have perhaps gotten in a little bit sooner, but, COVID delays and things like that. And we
Well, and
had some
PFAS studies, I mean,
plant
that's-
Issues, yes. So really, it was one of those things that was kind of out of our hands as far as timing, because, the PSC does have what they call a simplified rate increase, where you could just go in and get a cost of living increase. We were prevented from doing that until our asset was completed too. So we really had no opportunities for a rate increase.
are we allowed some capital, not necessarily debt repayment, but surplus allocation for?
In the rate of
Improvements.
return, yes.
Okay.
So assuming the 45 was a semi-accurate number for the time that it was developed, and with the 2 approvals that we got, we really have only realized 30% of the 45.
Right.
So we aren't even to the original projection yet.
Right.
Because we're still building, or under construction.
Right.
Building, testing, whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do think we have a pretty good idea of obviously what the plant is going to, the total cost will be, because we're so close to completion, that we're able to accurately estimate that. When we submit it, it will be, done shortly thereafter, and so it would qualify to
But when we
submit.
conducted the public information meetings for the planning of the plant to start with, the public-facing number that we went forward with was the 45.
Yes.
So even though the ratepayers have experienced phased increases, 2 on this side and at least 1 on the wastewater side, because the council controls that, right? So that that process that we undertook, that we revealed to them 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, hasn't even been fully implemented yet. So, I think what I want to be clear on is make sure that, whoever's talking about this, because, people that watch us on TV, you don't want to see somebody think, oh, buckle up, ratepayers, you're going up another 45%. We're still dealing with the same 45%. We
Right.
just never got there. So, we're not dealing with another.
And the debt relief could offset that 45% mark, right? It could make it 43%
Yeah,
if we help the utility.
It would
I mean,
be,
it could lower it.
sure.
Or it could lower it 44.9%.
well, or if
you
we
know,
find
or
that based
whatever.
on today's cost of everything, that 45 should have been 50, maybe we can hold it to 45 by doing what we're doing, I mean, we just don't know, everything has gone up exponentially so much that, it's hard to compare 2020 numbers and today on anything feel like apples and oranges right now, so.
Yeah.
So now we're on to.
So,
Water
and this
capital,
is
okay.
just an outline of the capital budget for the water utility. Again, lead replacement is another item that we need to talk about in the future because that is something that, is a item that needs to be addressed. We've talked about a couple of ways that we could do that. One of it is by amending some of our TID districts to actually put it in as a cost like we do other infrastructure. Or, historically, unless it was like a business campus expansion, water and sewers kind of paid for their own costs. We haven't put that in the TID district. But maybe, because this is a health concern and it's something that we've had struggles getting into the utility budget, that would be a strategy for us to use. The other one would be that extra year of housing stock improvement where you can extend the life 1 year. I had reached out to the league to see if that would be something that they would want to add for their legislative agenda. And they said actually Appleton and Eau Claire, I think it was, are actually doing street projects with their 1 year of low-income housing.
Is that to offset
Extension.
the assessment to those census tracts,
Probably.
probably? Which is what we do with block grant anyway,
Right.
so, okay.
So Kurt Watinsky definitely thought that would be an eligible cost in that 1 year. So that would be another strategy that we could use to try to help with lead replacement. From the sewer utility, kind of looking at the same situation, 99,248,000 is the total debt authorized. Today, and of that 99,089,000 is the Clean Water Fund. We have 82,114,000 outstanding at October 20th. The debt payments for the sewer utility are $701,000 for the 2017 issue, $441,000 for the 2019 issue, and then the clean water at its current draw levels is $3.7 million for a total of $4.9 million of debt retirement for 2023. If we would draw that full amount, our maximum annual payment for that debt would be $4,131,000. Again, this one is nearing kind of the end of its construction cycle, and I believe that we don't think we're going to borrow that whole amount, right, Eric? Because it's had contingencies built in. So the water or the sewer utility is in a better situation than the water as far as rates and its financial budget. Back in March, when we were starting that plant, 79% was the projected rate increase for that plant. The rate study had actually a 4-phased approach recommended, 22% on October 1 of 2020, 22% on July 1 of 2021, and 18% on October 1 of 2022. I think the commission recommended a slighter or a reduced amount for that first issue of 18%, and then they went with 22 and 19. So the final rate increase has not yet been implemented. The consultant, which was Ellers, said, 18% on July 1 of 2023, or do a rate study as of 1/1/2023 to see where you are. And we have reached out to Ellers for an update to the sewer rate structure too, so that we have a good understanding of.
Sewer
where-
rates are really controlled by recommendation from the commission and approval of the council. That's a matter of local control, right? So that's not a PSC waiting
Right.
for type
Correct.
situation. If the commission decides they need 18 and we pass 18, it's 18, right?
Right.
So, okay. So it's easier to manipulate that. I mean, you can see that we have been more proactive on those first three, to at least stay ahead of it a little bit. We're not waiting. Okay.
Looking at revenues, we're predicting about a $10.6 million revenue for 2023, and you can see that's up from 2021 of 8.2 because we've had 2 rate increases during that time. Again, all the expenses, about 6.3 million, which gives you a net profit of 4.2, much better than the water utility. If we add back depreciation of 1.2 million, we have basically 5.5 million to pay debt and capital with. So our debt payment is 4.9. That still does not give us much for capital. Their capital plan is 2.6 million, so if they did their entire capital plan, they again would have a shortfall of about 2 million, and so that is why we submitted that to ARPA. Their full capital plan is the 3.8. As we've talked, they already have 800,000 of ARPA for that screening project, and then you did authorize the 17th Avenue project to be TID financed, so that is a 400,000, that brings you down to that 2.6 financial need. And again, justification for ARPA funding. So things that we have yet to do, assessed valuation, we're still waiting on that. We haven't gotten that yet. The supplemental requests and the revenue reviews, I suppose I should add on there, making a formal recommendation on that tax equivalent.
On the pilot payment?
Yes.
I think we should definitely add that. And then, so do you want us to tonight review where we're at for cost to continue so we can see where our mill rate would be if we do absolutely nothing?
Sure.
Or you want to dive into that? Because that really, I think, is the burning question that a number of us have been waiting to hear. If we only preserve today's services, operations, and staff, how short are we?
And
And
there
then
was-
we go from there.
So a couple other things. So, I talked to economic development and planning. There were a couple of things that they had wanted to take care of in the 2023 budget that didn't make it into the document. One of them is 25,000 for wetland delineation. That's out in the business campus. We do have funds available for kind of general engineering, and so I think, the existing budget would likely be able to absorb that without any modification. And then along the riverfront, they were looking for roughly 120,000 for North Riverfront planning services and 50,000 for dive point demolition. Also, one of the things that I think as a finance committee, we need to put on our agenda for 2023 is the old water plant and what
Yeah.
we need to do.
What happens there?
Right. Obviously, that is a key parcel as it pertains to the Wausau Chemical, because it's right next to Wausau Chemical. And I think that is something that a TID district could help facilitate. So I think, in the 2023 year, we can maybe try to, get an idea of what costs would be associated with that and what we think would be the right way to move that from the water utility to an economic development project. And then also there's the 700 Grand Avenue. I'm not sure, depending on whether that cash is actually needed in, I see Liz is gone now, in 2023. I didn't think.
She's
it
on
was-
WebEx.
Oh, she is?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep, here, if you need me for anything.
Oh, okay, thanks, Liz. I didn't think the 1.8 was gonna be needed in 2023. Did you, Liz?
I think that, I'm trying to remember the timeline off the top of my head because I don't have the response in front of me. I think that they were planning on beginning construction in fall of '23, but we weren't entirely sure if that would happen because it's kind of unusual that a tax credit project could move that quickly. So I think it's something, we talked about it a little bit this morning in a separate meeting, and I think it's possible to ask to delay until 2024 if that is needed for the budget. And it might happen anyway, because like I said, they were planning on fall of 2023 for construction.
Okay.
So those were some other issues.
Okay, yeah, we certainly can add them to our to-do and think about list for sure.
So if we wanted to go back and look at where we were from a tax. Don't look if it.
That's dizzying.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. So from assessed tax rate, it is right now 42% increase in the tax rate. So, a $100,000 home would see a $42 increase in their taxes. It meets the requirements of the expenditure restraint and the levy limit. And if you recall, kind of looking at what our strategy or a target, I guess I had gone through and looked at, about 10 other communities our size and found that the average was about a 4.63% increase. So that's exactly where we ended up. Obviously, I think I'd mentioned, there were communities that were higher and there were communities that were lower. I think the lowest one was Wauwatosa with a 2.2% increase, but they were committing a lot of ARPA dollars
To balance their
their
budget.
2023 budget. And they were things that, in the future, similar to the positions that I had shown on, the screen during my presentation last week, that ultimately will end up in the budget, like the firefighters and like the homeless person, I forgot. what
Outreach.
that-
Outreach coordinator,
where we're gonna have to merge those onto the levy. So, like in Wauwatosa's case, that is a deferral of ongoing expenses.
So this year, then to sum it up, to do absolutely nothing new, to just continue with the, the services we provide today that people all appreciate, we'd be looking at a 4.156% increase, which is 42 cents,
Yep.
which $42 on a $100,000 home.
Yes,
So-
and that is based on, I think, a 0.7% increase in assessed value, which I think is a conservative increase. So it could be a lower impact.
Right, and then, of course, once we see the combined mill rate, I think schools indicated they were going down this year, even with the referendum, counties going up. We don't know, I don't think we've heard what NTC is doing.
No.
So, we don't know, but where we fall, but, I think as we go and, look at which supplements we're gonna build in, obviously the ones that present ongoing budgetary pressure, like staffing, those are things that we have to think about. If, obviously, like I said, if you hire somebody mid-year, you only get half of the cost, you don't get the whole cost, but the next year, you get the full freight. So those are the things that we have to weigh in our mind when we decide what we're going to say yes to this year and what we're gonna make wait, or like fan out over, if anything could be, fanned out over multi-years and done in phases. That's one of our first tools that we try to employ. Some of these requests are, the material requests are fairly small, but still $25,000 equals a penny on that mill rate. So we would create that upward pressure by baking in more stuff, I guess is, Sarah?
That had been my question, was what, is the sort of magic formula? And so it's $25,000 of extra spending is about a
A
penny.
penny, about, yep.
So on this 480 off supplemental, what does that equate to then above and beyond?
hypothetically, if you approved all the supplements, you mean?
Right.
And
Like,
we
what
can
does
do
that add up to be?
Once you guys rate it, we'll put the little, what the calculation is, and then you'll be able to see.
She adds a
Once we have the
column
rate.
and you
Yeah.
can see in fractional cents how it affects your mill rate.
Yeah.
If it's a penny or a fraction of a penny or whatever. And then we figure out kind of where to draw the line, which we could do tomorrow night probably,
Yes.
right? So if we can upload you those sheets like tomorrow morning, you could have that for tomorrow night's meeting.
And when you look at the, like the things that we've fit into the budget, obviously personnel was a big issue this year. We gave a 2% lift to the non-reps mid-year, and then, as of 1/1, a 3% cost of living. So, it really had to have a 5% increase in that for inflation. The health insurance of 9.5, the union contracts, the step progression that's accelerated if you're below midpoint, and the impact of pretty much everyone's Wisconsin retirement, the employer rate going up, CCITC, all of the software maintenance increases, and the increased share, our responsibility of CCI overall, utility increases, other general inflation, and then really accomplishing a motor pool increase of 12%. I thought those were all good things to get accomplished.
Right, well, and that does kind of set the motor pool back, on a better path too,
Yes.
like we talked about with that 5-year amortization. If we renew some of the fleet and we, maybe mitigate some of the need for maintenance, whether it be internal or external
Right.
maintenance, depending on whether or not it's outsourced, we might be able to recover some of those dollars too.
And
so.
really not relying on ARPA in the 2023 budget, which I think, is pretty good too.
It is. I mean, we've allocated some, we've got some left to do yet. We've got, obviously, we still don't have yet all of our numbers for what help we're getting or not getting for our PFAS solution. So I think we still have to keep a pin in that in the back of our mind that we may need a chunk of ARPA for some of that too. So that's, once we know, I guess, what we're getting in terms of state and federal help, then we can maybe have a better beat on that. So anybody have questions on any of that? Because that kind of brings us to a good stopping point for tonight. And then tomorrow, we'll look at how everything stacks up. First, the ARPA requests for the Public Works that we ranked for tomorrow. And then we'll have also these supplements, and we can kind of grind that out tomorrow night, if that works. If anybody else, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I have one more. I'm just looking at Green Bay's as an example, and it looks like, for better or worse, looks like they might be at 6.8%
Yeah.
roughly.
That rings a bell.
But I guess the question with that is, when will ours be posted on the
I'll try to
city
get it
site?
posted tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
That, and then once we have, fine tune those numbers, because we're hoping with our goal is, depending on how far we get tomorrow night, we'll know if after tomorrow night, if we feel like we also need Thursday night
Right.
for a final session, and then that will get us to a point where we can do the public hearing on 11/9, so. All right, so absent any additional comment, I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Watson, is there a second by Martins? Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one ever is. We'll stand adjourned, and we'll see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.